So what I was doing right there is going up the scale by triads. You might ask, what are triads? Well, triads are just a simplification of all the chords you already know. So A chord, A triad, right? B chord, B minor chord, B minor triad. C sharp minor, C sharp minor triad. So triad, T-R-I, that means three. So there's going to be three notes in each one of these triad chords. So triad equals three-note chord. That's pretty easy. So these three-note chords have a different shape depending on what string the root note is on. Every triad is made up of three notes. We already know this. What are those notes? So those notes are the root note, the third, and the fifth. So if you were to go through, say, your A major scale, right? So in our A major scale, each one of those notes has a number or a name based on what it is, its relation to A. So A would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then our octave, 1 again. So for A, the fifth would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's E. So we'd call that the fifth because it's 5 degrees of the scale up from the root, counting the root. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth. The third would be 3 degrees up from A. 1, 2, 3. So a triad needs to have a root and then a third, so 3 degrees of the scale up, and then a fifth, 5 degrees of the scale up. So this is all kind of a lot to take in right off the bat, but basically what it boils down to is that every triad is going to have a different shape. You know, we've learned all kinds of shapes on guitar. We've learned like our E major shape, right? We've learned our B minor shape. We've learned our D shape, our D minor shape. And instead of thinking of all the notes that are in those chords, a lot of times we just think of them by shape. So we can do the same thing with these triads. We can think of them by shape. So the one that I was playing, that shape, the root is on the high E string. So what I was playing was on the high E string, I was playing the A major scale. Right? So let's go through this shape. So for our A major scale that we're going to work on doing the triads, up the neck, we are going to bar on 5, both the E and B strings. And then with our second finger, we're going to play 6 of G. So that's our major triad shape with the root on the E string. So it goes root, fifth, third. So this would be known as our second inversion because our root is the highest note. Normally our chords are the most stable, or they sound the most like the chord they are when our root is the lowest note. But just for the sake of learning the shapes, I think it's easier to start with the root on the high E string because most guitar players, by the time you've played for a little while, have at least memorized all the notes on all the frets of their low E string, right? You got E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, right? You can probably name those because a lot of times we're rooting our power chords around the E and the A string. So it becomes kind of a necessity to learn what notes they are because if you say, play me a C power chord, okay. you know. You can play it on both the A and the E string. So I think it's easier to think of it on the E string because we can easily memorize all of those fret names. So that's our major shape. We know that. So when we're doing triads up the scale, they follow a pattern, and we'll kind of denote this pattern with Roman numerals most times. This is a concept known as function. So the pattern is gonna go major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major. So we'll get to all that. Just that, all that means is it's a different shape from major to minor to diminished. There are 3 shapes we have to memorize to play these triads up the scale. So we already know one of them, major. So I like to think of this one as kind of your F major shape. So if you know your big F chord, right? Those 3 notes, even if you only know the little f, that shape is in there. So then we're going to move up 2 frets, so that's going to be relative to the E string. We're going to move up a whole step, and then we're going to go to a minor triad shape. So because our third is on the G string, to make the chord minor, we just lower the third by 1 step. So that translates to a shape like this. So we're just barring both G, B, and E all on the 7th fret. So our pattern going major, minor, then we're going to go minor again. And so remember that our scale goes whole step, whole step. So we have to go up another whole step with that minor shape. Then if you remember, between 3 and 4, there's the first half step of our major scale. So we're going to move up a half step, and the next chord, our 4th, is going to be a major chord. So we'll go back to that major shape. Remember, you might say, well, isn't that a whole step from G9 to G11? It is, but we are basing our half steps and whole steps around the high E string. So we would just go up a half step here to 10, and then our second finger is going to be on 11 of G. Then we have another whole step. And we stay in that major shape. So we would be on 12, 12, 13. Then we have another whole step, but we go to a minor this time. And then we have the third triad shape here. This would be diminished. So diminished, all that means is that we have a root, a minor third, and a diminished 5th. Diminished just means decreased by 1 fret or 1 half step. So what this shape ends up looking like, our E string, we're on minor here, all barred on 14. Our E is going to go up a whole step, and we're going to play that with our third finger, 16. Our first finger is going to play 15 on B, and our second finger is going to play 16 on G. Right? That's our diminished shape. And if you notice, it looks a lot like the D7 shape. So that's kind of how I like to think of that shape. And then we're at 7, so the next one would be major shape, and it's going to be on 5, but an octave up, right? We're on 5 down here. So we'll be on 17, 17, 18. So it's a good idea to get familiar with these shapes and what note is what. You know, there's 3 notes in a triad. There's a root, a third, and a 5th. 1, 3, 5. That's the triad. They can be in any order. Like I said, the most stable shape is with with the root as the lowest note. And then the other inversions, the fifth being the lowest note, the third being the lowest note, those are a little less stable, but on guitar it doesn't matter so much. It's more for piano. So practice going through all these shapes. Remember, this is your major shape with the bar on B and E, and then the second finger 1 fret higher than B and E. I like to think of that as like our F shape. This is your minor shape, all 3 strings barred on the same fret. And then our diminished shape, that looks like our D7 shape. So that's first finger on B, third finger on E, second finger on G, and the first finger is 1 fret behind the other 2 fingers. So like I said, it looks like a D7. Okay, so practice going through these. First of all, just play them. Just play them up the neck until you get the hang of it. And then try playing them backwards. And if that becomes really easy for you and you get them all memorized, try doing like I was doing. Going up, G, B, E on every one. And then E, B, G the other way. And if you really want to challenge and you want to kind of work your brain while you're working your fingers, try to name each chord as it comes. It might be helpful to start by naming each note and then just saying major, minor, diminished. So if we were to name all the notes of the A major scale, we have A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Right? So, and then we would just say major or minor for each of those. So, A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, G sharp diminished, and A major. Right? And so as you name those, practice the shapes, you'll start to recognize these shapes in your solos and your riffs because they're everywhere. These triad shapes make up so much of our music that it's super helpful to know which ones you're on and how they fit into the key you're playing in. But start with the shapes, start trying out the shapes and moving them around on the guitar. We will do, we'll start with this second inversion shape, and then we'll work backwards doing the first inversion and then the root position of each of these chords on the G, B, and E string. So have fun with this exercise.